Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Wade's Garage. Hopefully in today's video, this thing is gonna fire up for the first time. Where we left off before, we did the fuel system, a few other videos, we did the transmission install, we tidied up the engine bay. If you're not already familiar with how this was set up, everything was set up here for drive-by-wire. Everything is literally ready to go, set up for flex fuel, E85 and stuff, and we were just waiting on the harness here. So we received the harness, we received the computer. Here is the ECU Master Black series. This is what I'll be running with the car. There's the cord in there to connect to the laptop. Got some connectors here and stuff. I'm gonna basically just go ahead and start with this. It looks a little overwhelming with the amount of wires here, as you can see, but everything is all nicely labeled. As you can see, that's cam sensor, we got injector 6, and so on and so on. Everything is labeled for that. So we're gonna go ahead and get this thing ran in. I'm gonna start with the bottom here and run it into the car. And then we're gonna start fishing the wires where it all needs to go. Just start plugging stuff in. It takes quite a bit of time just to kind of figure out exactly where the best spot is to route the harness. Make sure things are, not overlapping, rubbing through, or, just everything needs to be comfortable, not tight or pinched or anything. So once you get going there, plugging a few things in, everything should just start to line up. If you guys can read what this says, that's going to the boost controller. Gapple sauce, I figured out what that one was. My wiring harness guy placed that on there, so I was wondering exactly, and I thought about it. I'm like, it must be a boost controller. So it goes to my boost controller here. Off of there, everything's all labeled, which is very nice for them to do. So engine coolant temp. I have to get one more sensor for this guy here, so my dash reads in the dash, but I'll be able to read coolant temp through my BTI gauge for now. But I'll just get a sensor and thread it right into where that spot is. Not a big deal. Alternator's all plumbed up. Everything is looking super good here. So now that everything is routed, we should have fuel and we should have power going into everything, and I should be able to at least crank this over. So we're gonna go ahead and try that and see if it cranks. Everything's plugged in, we got power. If it cranks and we got everything going, then the rest is up to the tuner to hop on with me and get everything calibrated for the drive-by-wire and all the sensors that I have. So if we come in here, we should be able to turn the key. So that lights up. You can hear my fuel pumps. Let me just check if I have any leaks for fuel. So this is a good time to check this. And here it's circulating in the tank there. Here's my E85 fuel sensor. So this is the return setup. Need to make sure that there's no leaks at the fuel rail or anything near my injectors and feed lines. Everything seems to look pretty good here. Nothing underneath. I'm taking a look under here. There, everything's all temporarily wired up right now just because I want to be able to start it in case I need to move some pins around or anything. So now I can go ahead and crank it. Obviously it won't start because the tuner needs to set up the injectors and everything else, but I should have a crank. Which I do, which is perfect. Excellent. So that means everything's hooked up properly. Now the rest is when we hook up the laptop to get the tuner to play around with the settings on the sensors, like I was saying. We're gonna do all this in one video here. Me running the harness and everything else. Obviously I need to wait for the tuner when he's free on his schedule to take over my computer and get everything figured out on his end. But luckily for you guys, this will be all one video, so stick along. Let's hope this thing starts, fingers crossed. We're gonna take a look at some of the stuff that, as you noticed, Grandis Racing has sent me a hoodie, and at the beginning of the video, I was wearing one of his hats too, which is kind of sweet. He's the king of the 6-speed swap in these cars, in my opinion. He sent me a hat there, the sweater I'm wearing. He sent me a Grandis Racing banner here. I'm not sure exactly where I'm gonna put that yet, but I need to find an empty spot. There's one there, maybe one over there, I'm not sure. Or one over here or sitting there. I think it might look good sitting on that wall. That wall needs something. And then another shirt here, which is great. He sent me some Tremec MTF too as well. Right now I have the Dextron 3 in the transmission for break-in period. Then I'm gonna dump that out and then put the Tremec MTF in. All fluids are in this car. Coolant is all set up there, all vacuum bled, power steering fluids in it, oil's in it, fuel's in it. Everything's ready to go. Just waiting on the tuner now. Let's get this thing going. I want to hear that turbo start up. I'm very nervous. Thing I wanted to do to the garage here is this side. I've always noticed that it's lacking a little bit on light. So what I'm gonna do is I have two plugs, one plug up there, plug over there, and I'm gonna put them on Wi-Fi plugs. You can get that, or you can do like a Bluetooth thing so I can hit a switch and they'll turn on some lights. I think I have some extra of these bar LED here, super easy. I highly recommend getting these. I just got them off Amazon for super cheap and they're super bright. I got two over here, as you guys can see, and it really helps with lighting up this area with the cars. So I think it would be a good idea to put one there, and one here, one there, and then have them on a switch, and we'll see how they turn out. Way more lit up over here. These lights reflect off of this. See though, there's no lights here really, but there's a bunch over on this way. So this really helps with lighting up this section over here. I don't know if you guys can tell the difference, but I certainly can on this side of the shop. The white walls, it definitely makes it brighter. Makes me want to get a bunch more of these and connect them with these in here, but then you just get out of hand and then your shop is too lit. I think this is plenty of lighting for now. It really lights up over that area and reflects off the roof there. It does a really good job having a white ceiling and white walls. It reflects and doubles your lighting, in my opinion. If I were to do black like roof and black walls, then it would definitely absorb most of the light, but that's much better. Now back to the Supra. Now that the harness is all ran and everything, my goal with this setup when the harness was on is to have it nicely tucked where it looked almost no different from having a harness versus not having a harness in it. And it looks super clean. I'm very happy with how this turned out here. The main wiring harness here comes out of here with this nice boot here underneath the intake manifold. All your injectors come through the runners and get placed in through there. The map sensor sits here. Everything's labeled nicely. Flex fuel sensor here for E85. That's a nice spot for that. Off the return setup here, and then it runs down and through to the fuel tank for the return. These are for my fuel pumps, and I got these splitters here from Moroso, I guess that's how you say it. They're pretty handy for running extra things on. That's my subwoofer. These are my fuel pumps, and then that's my main power, and it goes down to a circuit breaker. And then these are obviously your grounds over here, and it's just nice because you have options. These are caps in here right now because I couldn't stand seeing the open holes with threads. It didn't look very good, so I just put the nice little push pins in there, and if I need to use them, I just pop the push pins out. Keeps it nice and tidy, and it looks a little bit more complete instead of just having open holes. It looks really good in here. I can hardly notice that the harness is on, which is, like I said, it's one of my goals that keeps it nice and tidy. We are now just about to hop online with the tuner. And, he's gonna take over my computer, get tapped into the ECU masters, and hopefully everything works out with this drive-by-wire. We have changed everything on this car. Engine, trans, like wiring harness, computer, and turned it into this in a matter of, well, we started this project of the swap October or November this year, and I've only owned this car for just over a year now. It's been a lot. Buying these parts and building the engine, we did the cams, we did the transmission, the T56 in it, new fuel pumps, wiring harness, computer. We've changed everything on this car. So it's not like it was running before and we changed one thing here and there, and then it's a little bit kind of stressful because it's like starting right from scratch, and hope, fingers crossed, that everything works properly. If there's any issues, we'll run into them when it first starts. That'll tell us that we did the cams and the springs and the retainers right and everything else. We got the oil cooler set up. So yeah, just so many different variations and variants that could be going wrong with if you've changed everything like I was saying. But I like to have the confidence, and I built pretty cool cars here in my opinion. Never really had any issues with them. We got the supercharger kit on that one, and we did the LS3 swap on this one, and that one went very, very smooth. Couldn't be happier with the setup on this. Hopefully that's the same with this. I've never had a standalone ECU before. The 350's on an E38 ECU from a Corvette, so it's kind of like a standalone, but not really. Like, it's like factory. But we went with an ECU master in this car. We're gonna plug in, get the laptop going, and see what we can do, see what kind of problems we run into, hopefully none. But before we attempt to start this thing, I'm gonna take a look at, just double check everything underneath of it, that we're okay. There's nothing that we can see until we actually run it and see if there's any leaks or anything like that, but We're gonna get just a once over underneath here, make sure everything's tight. We didn't miss any bolts or anything like that. Everything's connected. If you guys haven't already seen this yet, it turned out pretty good. I just put a OS Geiken rear end in here. It's a 1.5 way, so that should be great. Factory LSD is sitting over there, and it can only hold a certain amount of power until those small worm gears break. So we went ahead and went with the big heavy duty OS Geiken. It should handle the power no problem. I got everything marked, so then that way I know if something is backing off or not for bolts and stuff like that, because it's a drive shaft, there's gonna be vibrations. So I wanted to see if anything moved or not. It's just a little tip that you can do. You can easily use a permanent marker or a paint pen, doesn't really matter. So we got the new bushings back here as well in the subframe. As you can see, I marked those too, so we know if they're not backing out or not. Vibrations can tend to do that, so use a little bit of Loctite on where it's needed, but everything's looking really, really tidy underneath here, as you can see, super clean. Turns out great. All these new hardware, new bolts just satisfy me like underneath of a car. All of our fuel systems ready to go. Everything looks good up here. Got my transmission connector here that I made for the controller wiring. Everything looks like it's tucked. It's not gonna get hit or caught in anything on the clutch or moving parts. So that looks good. Now that we have done a basic check over underneath, made sure everything was kind of, you know, somewhat tight. I went over it just before with some wrenches and stuff. Everything's good. Okay, the base map is loaded onto the car. So we're gonna go ahead and crank it over and see what happens. He's played with all the settings and calibrated as much as we could, and we'll take it from there. Everything works. We got one leak that I noticed. Small leak at the sandwich plate where the oil cooler is. So I'm just gonna have to look into that and see what that's all about. But so far it runs, it idles. That means that we timed everything right on the engine. The cams were properly installed. I'm gonna fire it back up in a little bit here so we can do some more fine tuning with it and make sure everything works. When we were originally putting the base map on, we noticed that the drive-by-wire was acting up a little bit. It was working, but it was fluttering and acting up weird. So we looked into it, and there was 2 pins that needed to be switched at the ECU because it was getting different inputs. It's kind of hard to explain, but the tuner aspect and the knowledge that the tuners have for this sort of stuff is just mind-blowing. Like, I know a lot about cars, but their stuff is like on another level on how they explain it and their knowledge with tuning, and it's a whole different thing. It's really good information that I learn from these people that I work with sometimes. It's fascinating. But yeah, now we're gonna fix up that oil leak there. Like I said, we had some issues with the drive-by-wire a little bit with the pedal and stuff, but we have resolved all that with switching those 2 pins. It's happy now. It should be able to rev it. It did the learn procedure on the ECU master, which is cool. They have a learn procedure on that for a drive-by-wire system. So that's pretty handy as well. Let's get that oil leak fixed and then fire it back up. He has to clean up the fuel tables on it and everything, and then we can start revving it and go from there. So let's get that oil leak fixed. Oil leak's all fixed. That's tidied up. Now to put this thing on the ground after it's been on the hoist for so long, I think I'm confident enough to put it on the ground, roll it back. Just checked on the hoist there if the speedometer is working and everything else with the wheel speed, with that Bluetooth controller I was telling you about. Pretty cool. You can change the settings through your phone on the frequency and everything, and it makes the factory dash work. So that's all hooked up properly. And now I can move this back, get some good heat into this engine, get the oil circulating, get all the cam grease and everything else that we had in that engine all circulating and cleaned up, and then we're going to dump the oil out of it again and do that 2 or 3 times. Flush the oil system, make sure it's all clean because that engine was opened up. So make sure it's all good, make sure the oil cooler is working and everything. And my goal with this was to not move it off the hoist until it can move itself around. So I think we hit that goal. I've got gears, I got everything movement. So now let's just see if it moves on the ground. Once we get it on the ground, I'm gonna roll it back and then closer to the door so it doesn't smoke me out when he's dialing in the fuel and the tables and stuff like that. So it's gonna be needed to idle for quite some time. So let's get it lowered down, roll it back, open up the door a little bit so I don't gas myself out in here. I think it's time to invest in some race ramps, is what they call them. All my cars need to be blocked up on these blocks, as you can see here. If you guys didn't already see in that time lapse, I was rolling it back and it started rolling off of those blocks and back. Nothing got hurt or anything, but it rolled off the blocks. It rolled with the jack, obviously, because the e-brake works at the back and not at the front. It's just better safe before something happens or breaks a side skirt or something gets broken. I think we just need to invest in some race ramps instead of these blocks here. Anyway, it's on the ground now. I haven't seen this car on the ground in a long time, so it looks great, as always. I'm gonna roll this back and I'm going to open up the door, get the fuel, get him to hop on the laptop and change all the fuel settings and dial that all in and basically get us ready for our first drive. And then I can data log and send him the logs over and he'll fine tune them that way, get it completely dialed in on street. And then we'll take it to the dyno and then we'll put it on ethanol. Then we can get some real numbers out of this thing. Fuel tables are all dialed in now with that air fuel ratio sensor reading. It's running good. Super responsive with that drive-by-wire. It's like super responsive. It feels so good. I'm so happy we went with the drive-by-wire on this setup. So as you can hear, the exhaust sounds so good. That exhaust that I fabbed up there, the true 4-inch all the way back, you can hear a little bit of the whistle of the turbo at the back of the exhaust. The front, as you can hear the turbo singing, it just sounds so good. You guys have no idea how happy I am with this setup right here. I don't want to say really stressful, but if you guys know anything about, or you know that like building a car can be very, very stressful at times, trying to get parts organized. And when you spend a lot of time and money on a project, you want it to go so smoothly. And there's a amount of stuff that we did to this car, and the only thing we noticed was an oil leak and a bit of issues with the throttle, but we've resolved all that now. I think that's a win in my books. The amount of things that could go wrong, those are the only two things. I think we're doing all right here, and we must be doing something right. Turbo sounds excellent. He's got the fuel map all dialed in, so now it's basically street tuning, so I'm going to be sending him logs like I was saying there. I'm kind of nervous to take it for a first drive. It's still kind of crummy in my area here with winter. I mean, the roads are dry and they're fairly clean here. If I find a nice day, maybe I'll take it down the street, but that's about it because there's still a lot of crap on the roads like sand and salt and stuff. So I don't really want to get all that, you know, underneath the car and stuff, but I'm just very meticulous with how everything looks underneath of it, and I don't like to drive my cars in the winter months. That's why in the winter months, I can't sit still, and I save these projects like the LS Swap 350 and the supercharger kit. Like I saved most of that stuff for winter time, so then that way I don't have any downtime with the cars. Downtime, build time, winter time, same sort of thing. Everybody does it, so. But I'm very, very happy. Everything works as it should. The speedometer works. My BTI gauge fires up in there. I get my anti-lag and everything else through the BTI as well. It's cool because that BTI controls through CAN bus to the ECU master ECU, and I can do all my switches, boost controls, and everything through that touchscreen. And I can do launch control and everything, which is sweet. I don't have to take up any inputs on the ECU. But the exhaust sounds so good. It's such a nice tone to it. It's not too loud either, which is like perfect. That RTEC manifold sounds excellent with the HKS at the back and then my custom 4-inch that I built from the turbo back. It just sounds so good. Hopefully it sounds good under load. I'm sure it will once those wastegates open, but let me know if you guys like this here. I had somebody make this for me. It's a pretty sweet piece. It kind of tidies it up a little bit and separates the engine bay from an open area here. Helps direct the air, they say too as well, but I thought it looked pretty good in there. I was gonna get it powder coated black, but I think I actually kind of like it, that color. I don't mind it. It's so good to see this thing on the ground. Thanks guys for watching. That's gonna be a wrap for today's video. The next video I will do with this car will hopefully be the first drive in it, and we'll see if we run into any issues then. We should be okay, but who knows? That's the road test is the thing that will tell us for sure once things start moving and everything else. And then the video after that, I'm going to do a build breakdown on this car and what it costs to build a Supra with all the good parts in it, like T56, like all the really name brand stuff, Powerhouse Racing stuff, like use really good parts. And I'll do a cost breakdown. It's been a lot of money and time on this car, and it's paying off now. So we're gonna wrap it up here. Thanks for watching, guys. Stick around for the next one. Peace out.